Welcome to the In His Voice podcast, hosted by me, Rob L. Lowe, where we talk about those things that deeply impact the lives of boys and men without ever bashing women. We talk about everything from the bedroom to the boardroom, from the playground to the stadium, and everything in between. Today's topic, man, friendship. I was gonna talk about this a couple weeks ago on my podcast. And at the time that I was going to talk about, I was thinking about I was being in LA. I'm shooting this podcast here in my home studio in Florida. The last couple podcasts I shot at the studio there in Los Angeles. But being in LA and working out there and working on my own business as well as the job that I do and trying to market books and a bunch of things, I don't have a huge network out there. All of my network is professional, which is absolutely cool. But I got to thinking about all the places I have lived. And I've literally lived, meaning I had an address or an apartment um, where I stayed in 20 cities, 20 in the US, right? And all of those cities, I had an apartment in my name, with the exception of Indianapolis, and that's because I live with my grandparents. So 19 other cities, 18 or 19, where actually I had a physical apartment in my name. And I started thinking about all the places I've ever lived. But of all of those places I've ever lived, I met thousands of people. There are probably no more than 10 people that I give the title of friend. Now, there's probably another 20, 30 that I call associates, my circle, but there's only 10 that I probably give the title friend. And you think about all the cities that I've lived in, I think I have what I consider my friends. There's some in Atlanta, Houston, Kansas City, um, Indianapolis, Memphis for sure, or South Haven, Mississippi. Um, and then I have some mentors, folks who are close to me and who I really look up to. They're friends, but my relationship is different with them, and that's Dallas and Louisville. And so, of all the places that I lived, and I didn't live in Atlanta, but of all the places that I lived, only 6 of them. Let me take that back. Of the places that I lived, only Indianapolis, Mississippi, or Memphis, Kansas City, um, maybe Louisville. Oh, I forgot Orlando. Orlando. Um, do I have friends that actually live there and I met them there? And so the point being, long story is, I think in life people use the term friends way too often, right? That we throw out the term, we say what it means, but we don't think about really what does it mean. It's easy to call people friends who are always cheering for you. It's easy to call people friends who go along with everything you want them to do. But that ain't a friend. A friend is supposed to cheer for you, yes, indeed. But a friend is also supposed to be the one that tells you when you're doing wrong. A friend is also the one that tells you, listen, the decisions you're making are not in the best interest of you, yourself, your family, those you care for. If the people you have in your life are not willing to give you the honest truth, then those are not friends. Those are fans. And you can have some fans in your life, but if you're surrounded with only fans, you don't hear the truth. And the reason why this topic is so important is I thought about men. And I'm going to do another podcast on outlets for men, because that's important for people to understand. Men have to have outlets in self-care. But on this podcast, we'll talk about friendship. And so as I think about men, and it's important for men to have healthy friendships, right? We're talking about relationships, talk about friendships. Because, not that this is a Bible lesson, but we talk about iron sharpens iron. I have a cousin, Jelani. You've heard me say it a million times. He has a clothing line called Day One Dads. And Jelani is like my brother, cousin. But on his clothing line, it's supposed to represent men who truly wake up every day understanding their responsibility to be a provider, a protector, a role model, a good dude, or contribute to society. That doesn't mean that they don't have flaws and they don't have struggles and they don't have shortcomings, but they wake up every day understanding what the mission is. And so he won't even sell shirts to men that don't live that model. For instance, in our circle, including our friends, right? The friends we share, his individual friends, we don't let men in our circle, if they have children and they don't take care of their children. You ain't got to be with the baby mama, but you can't be in my circle if you don't take care of your kids. Because who I let in my circle is a reflection of the ideals and the philosophies that I support. Now, you and the issue with the baby mom, or their issue and their baby mom, or their ex-wife or their girl, has nothing to do with me, other than that you can't be putting your hands on no woman, right? I don't tolerate that. I don't tolerate spousal abuse. I don't tolerate drug abuse. I don't tolerate abusing people in any way, shape, fashion, form. But your relationship is your relationship. Y'all figure that out. But you can't be a man in my circle and have children and not feel obligated or responsible to not just provide for them, to be an active part of their life. You can't give me an excuse as to why um, you're not active in your child's life, regardless of what other circumstances are with the child's mother. So going back to friendship. So there are so many men, and this happens to women too, but this show is about men. There's so many men who are walking around in life, and they're surrounding themselves with folks in their circle who don't lift them up. Meaning, they praise them, but they praise them because they see them as either the attention getter, they're the man. I don't know if it's fear, whatever it is. Those are fans. But someone who is in their circle that will lift them up, will give them feedback that they don't like, because the intent is to help them elevate in life, right? And let's talk about young men. Let's talk about, what happens with boys. So obviously at one point I was a teenager, right? And I remember some of the folks who I would come home and I would talk about at school, people that I would met. My grandfather would always ask me, "Where are you going?" "Well, I'm about to go hang out." "Well, who you hanging out with?" And so I had some close friends, and he knew my close friends. And he liked my close friends because we grew up in the same neighborhood. You know, even though we had different parents, we had very similar family values because of the community that we grew up in. But there were other people that my grandfather would say, "Yeah, absolutely, no way. No way." And at the time, I was like, "But grandpa, you don't even know them, such and such," just being young, a teenager. As I got older, I understood my grandfather saw what I couldn't see. So he saw the folks that I grew up with. He saw how they were raised. He saw how they carried themselves in our house. He saw how respectful they were. But some of the other ones that I think he may have heard me on the phone, or joking about what I'm about to go hang out with them to do, and it wasn't anything legal. It just wasn't the things. He was like, "Look, that ain't where you need to be. That's not where you need to be, and those are not the type of people you need to hang out with." I literally remember being in high school, riding in a car with a friend of mine, and at the time I considered him a friend, and didn't realize he had drugs on him. Right now, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, I didn't sell drugs, but I'm in the car with this person who like was really cool and well liked and respected, and he had drugs on him. And I was like, "Man, what are you doing?" And so when I got home, I thought about that, and this is probably my junior, senior year, and I thought about, man, my grandfather was right. Be careful who you call your friend. Be careful who you let in your circle. Because you imagine how that situation could have went with no fault of my own. But I'm a young black male in the car with another young black male. Neither one of us got a driver's license with drugs in the car. There goes my career. And you see on the news today, all these young men, black, white, brown, all of them, but particularly in the inner city, how many of them lose their lives because of the circles that they hang with? How many of them lose their lives because they latched onto the word that this is my friend, this is my boy, this is my partner, the whole time that person meant no good in their life. And when you're young, it's hard to see that. I get it because I was there. I've done some stupid stuff. And as I got older, I look back and I said, man, why would you let yourself get in that situation? Why would you put yourself in that situation just for the sake of saying you friends? Fortunate enough, some of the knuckleheads that I grew up with or that I hung out with actually evolved and grew into men. And we think about these things now and it's successful and, just some good brothers. And we've had these conversations. We look back and go, wow. But those same brothers end up being friends with me, 30, 40 years later. Like my childhood friends to this day. I've had a couple of them, but there's a couple, man, that through the test of time, I can pick up the phone and call. Chris, childhood friend, absolutely. Mike Brown, and I say Chris Clark, Mike Brown, Sean Douglas, and then I got my man DJ. I got Will, I got LO. Those are just childhood friends. And then, I have one buddy, and I'll give him a shout out. We don't talk very much anymore, but as a childhood friend, this dude was truly a really good friend. And his name was James Combs. And James, if you see this podcast, shout out to you, bro. Um, James was such a great role model as a teenager for me because we were the same age. We were seniors in high school. James would let me use his car when he wasn't supposed to, and I only had a permit. He would go to work and let me use his car as long as I put gas in it. I go do all the things. I would pick him up from work. He'd drop me off at home, then he'd go home. Now, what's interesting is James was in ROTC. James had over a 3.0 GPA. James had one girlfriend he was loyal to, and I was a knucklehead. Here I am. I'm trying to drive his car. I got maybe a 2.5, 2.6 GPA, and I'm trying to juggle as many girls as I can my senior year in high school. But James knew all along when he graduated, he said he was going to go to the military. He was going to retire. He was going to have a career. And he did that. Like he was so focused. And one of the stories I talk about often is when I was a freshman in college, it was winter break. I had no ride home. They locked the dorm. No one would come get me. James had to work. It was a winter storm. I had to sit outside on the steps of Sanderson Hall, and he pulled up. The dorm locked like 5, 6 o'clock. He got there at 6:30, but he left Indianapolis and got to me in like an hour and 10 minutes in a snowstorm after he left work to pick me up to give me a ride home. Now, I don't talk to James very much today. We're still friends, but I'll never forget the impact he had on my life personally and even professionally because he showed me at an early age the type of discipline that it took. And so I carried that with me. So shout out to James. But as I said, Chris, man, dude, hey, if you're watching this, man, I'm grateful. Childhood friend, always been there for me. You and Letta, when I was in Indianapolis and I needed moments to get away, you were there. Sean, friend for life. I'm talking about friend for life. If you don't have friends that will drive 100 miles an hour in the city to get you to a plane so you can go interview for a job that you want, so you can live in the city that you want to live in to take care of your family, then that ain't a friend. And he knows what I'm talking about. Fellas, I want you to think about this, and maybe this is for the ladies. Single mothers. My mom was a single mother, and I was her only son, and I'm the youngest. But I do remember my mom, even at a young age, my mom being very um, very intentful, or she was intentional. I don't know if intentful is a word, anyway, but she was intentional in making sure I understood um, what it means to be a friend and to have a friend. Like whenever I was mean or just had a bad attitude towards my friend, she was like, no, Even at my own birthday party, my last birthday party, my mother talked to me and talked about playing and being safe and making sure I give my friends an opportunity to do all the things that I was doing at the birthday party. And so, man, I wish more people understood the power of friendship. They say you can tell the trajectory of a person by looking at their circle. Look at the 5 or 10 closest people in their circle, and that'll tell you their trajectory or at least their train of thought. We've always heard these things about surround yourself with people who will elevate you. You should surround yourself with more people in your life and give title to those folks, the title of friendship, who will elevate you spiritually, emotionally, mentally, if they can help you physically, and if they can help you financially, right? Not every friend will do all five, but they need to do a couple of them. You don't need friends in your life that will pull you down. That's not a friend. That does not mean you can't pull someone up who's a friend. But a friend will not pull you down, even if they're down. Understand? Make sure you catch that. A friend will not pull you down, even if they're down. You might just have to pull them up. But if you have people in your life, or your sons or have people in their lives, or your nephews have people in their lives, man, step in. Don't be afraid to question the intent, the relationship, because what you don't want to be is you don't want to sit across from a glass wall looking at someone you care for because you didn't want to give them feedback on who was in their circle. You don't want to sit in front of a casket and talk to someone that you care for because you wanted to be okay with the people they chose when you knew they weren't good for them. And then I'm gonna wrap this podcast because this is a really different one. This is personal for me. Um, I'm gonna speak to different folks, young men. You get one life. You have a mother, you have a father, whether your relationship is good or not. If you have brothers, if you have sisters, excuse me, know that there are people on this earth that care for you. You may not think there is, but there are. And so choose wisely the people you let in your life because there are people who expect you to come home every day and say hi. Don't you think about that? Single moms. If you're raising a son, I encourage you to find out who they're spending time with. I encourage you to challenge them. Watch how they dress. Watch how they talk. Listen, if your son hangs with young men who walk in your house with their pants hanging off of them, strong people to hang out with. Now I know that's a stereotype, but ain't no responsible grown man walking around with his pants with his pants hanging off his butt. If you're a millionaire a couple of times over and you have no other need to figure out what to do in life. So, but if they ain't that, and that don't even make it right, ask them. Find out who they're spending time with. Listen to what they're saying on the phone. Listen to the things that they value. Have conversations. And then finally, fathers. Man, we have a responsibility, fellas. I don't have sons. And my wife wanted sons. And I was afraid to have a son because I thought I would be too hard on them. Because I know some of the mistakes that I made as a young man. And I worried about every good thing that I impart in a son when he went out into the world, how many people was he going to encounter that would try to change those things? And I was really worried about that. I was worried about, you know, um, him being smart or anything like that or athletic. That wasn't my thing. I was just worried about there's going to be people in the world and influences. And I know the things that I saw growing up with young black men. And I was like, I just did not want to have to fight that with my own son. And so hindsight 2020, I'm older now. I realized that, man, maybe I was scared because of my own trauma, not because of what society would have did to my son. But nonetheless, fellas, whether you are married, with the baby mama, single, divorced, whatever it is, if you have a son, make sure you're spending time with them. Find out who's in their circle. Find out their friends, right? Invite them to come hang out. If your sons are hesitant to bring their friends around you, either something wrong with you or something wrong with them. And you got to go figure out which one. So, different type of podcast, I know, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of it. Remember, friendship is a beautiful thing. It's a blessing to have them. Houdini says, all you need is friends, right? Friends, some are okay and they treat you real cool, and some mistake my kindness for being a fool. You're going to have some of those. But once you weed through those moments and you find out who they are, man, cherish them, nurture those friendships, sow into those individuals because they'll sow into you. And they may not tell you what you want to hear, but they'll tell you what you need to hear at the time that you need it most. Those are friends. And if they're not willing to do that, get them out your life because they'll praise you, but they won't raise you, meaning they won't help you grow. All right, listen, take care. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I'll see you on the next episode of the In His Voice podcast with me, Rob L. Lowe. Take care. God bless.